Well, isn't Letterboxd out of 10?
No, Letterboxd is out of 5 as well.
Ugh.
And you can only do half steps. You can't do quarter steps.
No, make it quarter steps.
Since you don't have a 10 system, give me quarter steps.
Exactly. I want to be ultra specific, please and thank you.
Compromise. So, hey there, Film Buds. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. This is episode 184, and I am your host, Paul, and I'm joined today by my wife, Lauren.
Hi.
She's going to be my co-host for the whole episode. So it should be a good time. It's her first time. Are you excited?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to mess up.
You're gonna be fine. So today, Lauren and I are going to be talking about Candyman from 1992 and the Adjustment Bureau from 2011. Both are adaptations. And they're both kind of like things that are currently out right now. You've got Reminiscence, which is about a man who uses technology to like relive memories to try and get to this woman that he can't get to, which is kind of like Adjustment Bureau on a certain level, right? Sci-fi technology keeping man apart from woman. And then we've got Candyman, which is of course the first film in the franchise, which is also actually a book franchise as well. So that's sort of the reviews that we have in store, and then we're also going to talk about CinemaCon, and we're going to react to the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home, and the final trailer for James Bond No Time to Die. So we've got quite the packed episode for y'all. So why don't we go ahead and jump right on into it. And so our first film is Candyman, so give it a listen.
Have you ever heard of Candyman? If you look in the mirror and you say his name 5 times.
In cities everywhere,
Candyman?
they whisper his name.
Right. Candyman.
It's just a story.
Candyman?
Candyman.
So, Candyman, the first film in the franchise from 1992, is directed by Bernard Rose, and it's written by Bernard Rose based on a story, The Forbidden, by Clive Barker. And the premise is, the Candyman, a murderous soul with a hook for a hand, is accidentally summoned to reality by a skeptic grad student researching the monster's myth. And it stars Virginia Madsen as our grad student, Xander Berkeley as her boyfriend, Tony Todd as the Candyman, our titular bad guy, Casey Lemons, and Vanessa Williams. It also has a little cameo appearance by Ted Raimi, brother of horror director Sam Raimi. So, dear, do you want to start this, or would you like me to start?
You can start.
Okay. So like I said, Candyman is based on a short story, or not a short story, but it's based on a book, a previous material, but actually the previous material is all about class, and this Candyman decided to make it more about race, and so they switch around some elements to it, and it takes place in like England in the book, and now it takes place in Detroit. I'd heard about Candyman before. I heard about Candyman more recently as like the discourse around the discussion of horror has sort of shifted to be more inclusive. You know, I had seen him in some lists about, like, horror icons and slashers, but, like, it wasn't really a thing that I knew much about.
I mean, I would say that I just kind of knew about him in, like, a passing glance, kind of like The Boogeyman or something like that. I never knew that it was a movie or was a part of horror in any way. I just kind of thought it was, like, an urban legend.
Yeah. So I went into this honestly without a lot of real expectations. And I actually, for the most part, I really liked it. I think that I liked it more as I digested on it more. But I really like it for the most part. It's not at all like a typical kind of horror film, I would say.
No, I'd say it's probably more like suspenseful than like true slasher. I mean, it does have some gore in it, but it's pretty much like him like lurking in the shadows a little bit more so than like Freddy Krueger or something.
Yeah, or he's certainly isn't the silent golem like Michael or Jason. He is more chatty like a Freddy, but it isn't taunting. It's meant to be a little bit more sort of almost seductive.
Yeah.
For the most part, I really, really like the movie, though. I think my overall positives for the film, just at large, are I think the performances are really good. I don't think that there's anyone who gave, other than like the bimbo college girlfriend, the main performances are all like really good. I think that it's shot really well. I thought that it was like a good looking movie. It's got a great score. The score is by Philip Glass, who does absolutely incredible synthetic, very late 80s, early 90s sounding scores that are always very operatic.
Yeah.
So no, for the most part, like, honestly, I really dug it. My only real negatives, I would say, is that I think it does get a little bit lost more so in the third act, but we can talk more about that as we go. What are your thoughts at large?
For the most part, yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. I really enjoy like a good horror movie, and I thought that this kind of, fed that need for me. You don't get to see a lot of black horror icons, so this was fun. To see a different kind of, villain, let's say, than your average story. I liked the fact that they kind of talked about like the racial injustice in this. It felt really targeted. I feel like we keep like repeating things in history.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, man, speaking to right now, and this was back in the 90s. So, but no, I really enjoyed the movie, honestly.
Well, and I think that the movie is, I think, one of those that you do have to chew on a little bit. I don't think that it necessarily gives you everything on the like the upfront. You kind of have to really sit and think about what it's telling you, and you also have to pay attention. I think to a certain amount. I think there are certain questions and sort of doorways that it leaves open narratively, and I'm not sure that they're left open in a way that's satisfying or left open in a way that's just sort of open. But I think you're right. I think that his lore is very interesting. He's an interesting character. His backstory is steeped in racial injustice. He has a sort of very dark, racially motivated backstory that turned him into, this sort of horror menace. It's sort of almost like an Emmett Till kind of a story, almost. And I think it makes him effective and very different, because Freddy Krueger was, a maybe sex criminal who got burned alive by, like, angry parents. And I think later on they maybe say that he was innocent. I can't remember. But in, like, the remake, he's definitely not. And then you've got Jason, who just isn't really at all like, the Jason that actually had the trauma happen to him. The sort of disabled kid who was traumatized.
No, because then he's like an adult later. So I don't know how you become an adult after you're dead, but whatever.
So no, I thought that he was interesting because he's more talkative, like a Freddy Krueger as opposed to like a Jason or something like that. And his performance, Tony Todd is an actor who, like, I've seen around before. You've all seen him around before. He's also done a lot of voice work. Beyond Candyman, you might know him from The Rock, from The Crow. What are some other things that he's been in? Justice League Dark, the video movie that was straight to video. He was Darkseid. So he's been around for some time, and I thought that he did a great job in the part. Virginia Madsen is one that you don't really see often, and I thought that she did a great job here as well.
Yeah.
No, honestly, my only real critique with the movie is essentially once we okay, so the movie goes along and it almost kind of fakes you out as though there's not going to be an actual horror figure for a long time.
Yeah, they make it seem like it's all, kind of like urban legend.
That it's tied up to people justifying, essentially. It almost becomes this thing of like, oh, this is how people justify, some of the crime and things that have happened in these black communities, is through these urban legends. And it almost seems as this sort of out of like, oh, it was just the way that people talked about,
Yeah.
Mythologized crime in black communities. But then it turns out, of course, that the Candyman is kind of real. And it's at that moment that I think the movie does get both more interesting in some ways, but also a little bit more meandering in some ways.
Yeah.
Because it's this really weird shift, and then it gets more supernatural, and then it does get very horrifying, like, very quickly. And then it
Yeah.
goes back to kind of a simmer again, and then it starts to get into, like, real supernatural horror stuff. And then we end up with, like, the her getting institutionalized and stuff like that. And I think that part of the movie for me is the institutionalizing stuff is also probably, I think, institutionalizing a character is a hard thing for me. Because institutions are designed to be stimulus-neutral places. And it's really hard, I think, to do a story of a character in a confined space like that that's interesting, and I think that it's also then so hard to get them out of that space in a believable way. And I think that this movie runs into that exact problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my problem with the movie does also lie in the third act, because it starts out, the first time we see the Candyman, he's like in the shadows, off, monologuing at her, and then she gets like possessed by the spirit of the Candyman and creates, like, does crimes in his name almost. And then after that, he doesn't possess her anymore. She just is constantly, like, in the wrong place at the wrong time, or he's stalking her or whatever, because she doesn't do a thing ever again. And everybody's like, well, it has to be her because she did it the first time, and she keeps conveniently being everywhere. And so I think for me, that's kind of where the movie just kind of didn't pick a lane and stick with it. They just kind of, like, it jumped around a little bit more than I would like it to have.
Yeah, and he's trying to, on a certain level, right the wrong that happened to him by using Helen and this child as a way to create his surrogate family kind of in this dark afterlife. But I think my issue with that is that I don't think that they make it clear enough that there is supposed to be this kind of connection back to his past. They do this kind of, spoiler alert a little bit. They do this kind of almost Dracula-like thing where the woman that he loved in the past is represented almost identically by a woman, in the present. And I think for me, my issue there is that I don't know if they really tie his plotting enough to that sensation that he's wanting to kind of create this surrogate family. It seems like he stole this baby and is torturing her because he wants her. And then it's like, no, we're going to be together and be this whole family unit. And I'm not sure that whole thing for me was completely earned.
Yeah, I feel like if they wanted to imply that more, they should have just, like, kept hinting at it from the beginning, or, the reason why she was studying this in the first place was because she had, like, some weird otherworldly connection, yada yada. It doesn't matter. It could have been put in further in, so that way later on I could have gone, oh, she was the chick from the past, instead of, like, them kind of, like, carelessly just putting, like, 2 grains of salt on my fries and being like, yeah, was it salty enough for you? Did you get it?
Because also, what are the odds that this woman who looks exactly like the woman that he loves would end up saying the name Candyman 5 times to allow him to then, like, stalk her? But also, he seemed so content to leave her unstalked until he undid the urban legend stuff. So I think that essentially his whole motivation stuff there gets a little bit sticky. But other than that, I think the movie overall is really, really effective. And it's about gentrification and the mythification, sort of urban crime and in particular crime from black communities and things like that. And I think that it's really interesting.
And I honestly, like, with those points, I think that is where the movie thrives. Is with it, being mirrored in the black community versus the gentrified version of the community, and seeing the parallels happen. She gets attacked in the ghetto, all the cops are out, but all of these people have been murdered in the same place, and nobody hears from the cops. And so I think that those are the points where the movie really is like hits, closer to home than I would like it, but like in a nice sweet spot where like I can still enjoy it, and like I would like for more people to watch this movie.
Yeah, for sure. And I liked this enough that I'm definitely more interested now in how this new one is comparatively to this other one. Mm-hmm. There are several Candyman films. At some point we can watch all of them. I'd be totally fine to watch that. I think there are like 4.
So this is the first one.
Mm-hmm. The first one. I think this new one that is doing the whole like reboot with the same name thing.
It's kind of like the Halloween franchise where they were like, no, just the first one and then this. Don't worry about anything else, really.
Yeah, kind of. Except they do actually harken back to the movie's mythos apparently with this almost paper doll like end credit sequence that does the backstories of the Candyman hive, as all of the spirits that make up Candyman are called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a whole mythos at play. Actually, friend of the show, Nick Delgadillo, said that, in his opinion, they get too bogged down in the mythos in this new one. So I'm curious to see what that'll be like. It did great at the box office. It did $22 million in theaters, I think, or $20 million in theaters. So it really did fantastic. It did better, I think, than expected. So it's absolutely dominating. The new one is written by Jordan Peele and directed by Nia DaCosta. Mm-hmm. I like Jordan Peele a lot. I'm curious why he didn't direct it. Maybe he was just busy, or maybe he just didn't want to. But it still definitely has his fingerprint all over it. Like you can tell that he was on set a lot.
Yeah, it does give me a lot of like Get Out vibes or like Us vibes, just enough.
So, but I liked this one definitely well enough that I would consider myself a fan of this first one and interested in continuing on and seeing more of it. Mm-hmm. Slasher series are always hard for me. That was something that we talked about with Clark Collis in last week's episode, was the repetition of them and things like that. But this is something a little bit fresh and a little bit different, so I'd be curious to see where it goes. I'd also be curious to see how, I guess, whether or not the franchise decides to continue trying to adapt from the books or just goes and does its own thing completely.
I mean, I just hope that they choose something more interesting than whatever gets them more money.
No, that's fair. So on the Film Buds Twitter, which is @FilmBuds, you can follow us there. We did a little poll on slashers. So I did 4 slashers. I did Candyman, Mike Myers, Freddy Krueger, and Jason Voorhees. And I wanted you all to vote on who your favorite was. And with 37% of the votes, the winner was Michael Myers.
Oh.
Which is fair. Like, he's sort of the Mac Daddy of them all, I'd say. And he's very popular right now as well.
I mean, yeah, with all of the new movies coming out.
Yeah. In second place, it was a 2-way tie between Candyman and Freddy Krueger. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
And our last placer?
Our last placer was poor Jason. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. When I was a kid, people wouldn't shut up about Jason, and especially about Freddy versus Jason the movie.
How times have changed.
So, yeah, he sadly was at bottom. But no, I truly enjoy this. I think it's a good movie. I enjoy watching Virginia Madsen essentially sort of forced into becoming mythologized crimes, and that sort of downward journey. And I really enjoyed the movie overall. I thought it was great. Overall, I think rating wise, I think that I'll go tentative 4.
Okay, yeah, I'm like bouncing between 3.5 and 4, so I'm gonna smack right in the middle. 3.75.
Yeah, honestly, like a 3.75 feels more honest, but like I can't put that on Letterboxd. So, yeah, that's Candyman. And if you've seen it before, come and let us know what you think. If you've seen the new one, let us know what you think. I'm definitely inclined to see the new one for sure. Maybe once it's on streaming.
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and start talking about our next film, which is The Adjustment Bureau from 2011. And per usual, we have a clip, so take a listen.
What is this? We are the people who make sure things happen according to plan. We monitor the entire world.
Can't outrun your fate, David.
You've just seen behind a curtain that you weren't even supposed to know existed.
So, that was The Adjustment Bureau, which, again, came out in 2011. It is directed by George Nolfi, who, again, also wrote the screenplay. This is another one with a writer-director, two-hander. And it is adapted off of the Philip K. Dick short story Adjustment Team. So again, another adaptation as well. This one stars Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, Michael Kelly, Anthony Mackie, John Slattery, and Terrence Stamp. And the premise of the film is the affair between a politician and a contemporary dancer is affected by mysterious forces keeping the lovers apart. Why don't you take this one to start? You had seen this one before, correct?
Yes, so I can't give you exact details on how or when or why I watched this movie in the past, because honestly, I couldn't really remember it, and that is not to the movie's fault. It's not because I don't like the movie. I just have a hard time remembering. But no, I really enjoy this movie. I think that I like the weird the weird twist with how the Adjustment Bureau works and the going through doors stuff. I really like the mechanics of this movie. I think that it's a really kind of like simple, almost it kind of reminds me a lot of like the Bourne movies. I guess that's probably why they put Matt Damon in it. Is Matt Damon Bourne? Okay, cool. But it kind of, it feels like, a man getting chased around and doesn't understand why he's getting chased because of some higher power. But no, I really like it. I think that Matt Damon does a really great job. I love Emily Blunt in this movie. After, Devil Wears Prada is like around this time as well. It was nice, seeing a completely different character than that from this same era. Yeah, no, those are like my first kind of thoughts on it.
No, I think that's all fair. I had seen this before. I quite liked it. This came out like our senior year of college, or senior year of high school. Excuse me, I'm not that old yet. This came out our senior year of high school, and I really dug it. I liked the world. I liked how it was building. At that point in time, I had just started getting into some of the earlier Philip K. Dick adaptations like Blade Runner, and so this one struck a lot of chords for me back at that point in time. I really enjoyed the movie still. I think that it's a really like just stable movie. Mm-hmm. You know, are there maybe some holes somewhere in the logic of the system? I'm sure, but for the most part, I think that it does a really good job of giving me two characters, making me like them well enough that I want them together, and then constantly creating obstacles for them.
Yeah.
And I think that it really does a good job of doing that organically, of building the stakes, and I really enjoy the movie as an overall experience. I think that it still holds up as a cinematic experience. You know, there's things that are like it, of course, but I think that it's a really solid experience. I have no idea if it's a good adaptation. I haven't read the Adjustment Team's story.
I don't think anybody has. I don't know.
Philip K. Dick was once very widely read, and I'm sure that he is still read to an extent, but you know, you see a lot of the people who obviously grew up reading Philip K. Dick
Continuing
to do that kind of thing. So I think that like the issue is that itch is kind of scratched by certain things like Black Mirror, and some of that more sort of, and even with Amazon's, you know, Philip K. Dick series that they did that was meant to be kind of like a Black Mirror competitor. So it still definitely has, you know, his legacy is still definitely there, although I'm not sure, to your point, that people are really going back and reading the shorts. I think that probably, you know, people are just going back and watching the movies.
Yeah.
As far as Philip K. adaptations go, I think Adjustment Bureau is probably as good as any of the other great ones. Again, I guess it's kind of boring as an episode on a certain level. I don't really have a lot of like complaints about Candyman. I don't really have terribly many complaints about Adjustment Bureau.
No, it's just like a nice, easy movie to watch. You can sit down, watch it with your parents, or you know, with your kids or whatever. Like, there's nothing really that bad in this movie that I would think that it wouldn't be something that everybody could watch, even though I think it's like PG-13, so I guess keep that in mind if you have younger children and you're one of those people. But like, no, I really don't think that anything in this movie is like too terrible that like I wouldn't just like throw this on every once in a while just because I like watching it.
Yeah, like there's nothing terribly objectionable in it. I mean, Matt Damon is maybe, I guess, arguably a character of some controversy, and of course also Philip K. Dick is a character of controversy as well. But beyond those sort of, I guess, you know, sort of issues, and Matt Damon isn't the worst thing in the world. He's a little bit of a fucking idiot, but, you know, oh no. He's a sometimes dumb white guy. Who could have ever expected something like that?
No.
So, you know, no offense, Matt, but, you know that some of those didn't look good. So, but beyond that, you know, I think it does a really good job of building tension. I like the world. It has some pretty clear rules. It's a young Anthony Mackie performance, which is great.
Yeah, this was my first Anthony Mackie performance before I knew that he was Falcon, you know, in that weird gray area, before most of us knew who Anthony Mackie was. That's okay. It happens.
Yeah, two actors from the main cast of this film have gone on to have Marvel roles. We've got Anthony Mackie, who of course went on to become the Falcon, and then we also have John Slattery, who went on to be Howard Stark. Or he had already been Howard Stark, actually, at this point.
Oh.
Because Iron Man 2 had happened before this.
Right. No, look at that. Mm-hmm. Honestly, Hollywood is so tiny sometimes.
Yeah, small world. Yeah, I think if you haven't seen it, I think that it's probably one of those that's just sort of doesn't get mentioned a lot. I don't think that it necessarily did like outstanding at the box office. I can look real quickly.
And I feel like that's probably why I just don't really remember it watching it the first time. It's just kind of like, you know, it came, it went, and then other things happened in my life. But I really enjoy it, and I feel like we should watch it more often.
Well, and it's not like groundbreaking, you know. You're not going to walk out of it being like, oh, this totally blew me away. You know, I think Blade Runner is definitely like the first one is definitely like a better weirder experience, you know. But I think that this is just a really stable, adventure, actiony, romance-driven kind of film.
Yeah, if you're into action and you like happy, you know, here you go.
So the budget of the film is estimated at $50 million. It supposedly did $126 million worldwide, so, like, it definitely did all right.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, didn't go into sequel hell, so I guess that's why it died. I don't know.
But no, I definitely feel like this is one that people don't necessarily go and bring up as much or try to highlight in any kind of way. And I think that it's just it's okay to be like just a really good movie. You know, it's good to just be good.
Yeah, and I think that this movie is good.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Philip K. Dick, some other adaptations of his work include The Man in the High Castle as, of course, a TV show. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep became Blade Runner. Total Recall is one of his, and he's also influenced, of course, countless things. All of it is pretty much science fiction, or on the verge of science fiction.
So when was he, I guess, when was he popular? When was he actively writing these things? Like what decade?
Okay, so he was writing from 52 to 82. He was born in 1928, and he died in 1982.
Wow, writing up until his death. Nice.
Yeah. But really Scanner Darkly is another one of his. And Minority Report, duh. But what really honestly kind of kicked it off was Blade Runner, which came 1 year after his death.
Oh.
So maybe, I'm not sure how intentional it was, but I think that Blade Runner probably ended up being kind of like this real posthumous marker for this author, because it's after Blade Runner that we start to then get all of the other adaptations.
That's
later.
that's so weird. Like, did they contact him before he died and asked to do all of this stuff, or was it just like, perfect, he's dead, now let's take his stuff and make art out of it?
You know, I'm not really sure about the backstory of where Blade Runner came from. I don't know if he had spoken with Ridley Scott or in any kind of particular way. Apparently a screenplay had been in the works for years, and Philip K. Dick had been critical of all versions. This is according to Wikipedia, so do take a bit of a grain of salt. I apologize I couldn't get something more concrete, but might I suggest following the hyperlinks at the bottom to a direct source. So I could understand this being something that maybe had a script going around for a while.
This kind of whole thing kind of reminds me of the lady who wrote Mary Poppins and her whole spiel with Disney.
Yeah. So Philip K. Dick, for those who don't know, I mentioned he's a figure of controversy. He was an atheist who then also had some sort of very strange, according to him, sort of almost paranormal experience that converted him into some sort of believer of a kind. He was married a lot. He was married to one woman, actually, from like May to November of the same year.
Wow.
He allegedly drove a woman off, like he was driving and there was a woman in the car with him, and he attempted to commit suicide apparently with her in the car. He apparently, sorry, like trigger warning, I guess, on a certain level for spousal abuse. I probably should have put that a little further in advance, but
We'll put it in the bio.
yeah, it was definitely, he was not a necessarily mentally well person, it seems. And yeah, he's quite the controversial figure, and I don't think that he would have necessarily aged well with the rest of the times.
Ooh, they be a changin'. That's really interesting that he created kind of so much order, I guess, within his worlds. You know, there was the Adjustment Bureau itself. It is bureaucracy. You know, there are rules. They have a certain dress code, or with Minority Report. I think that's really weird that, like, he wrote himself, like, a perfect society.
But he
almost.
also oftentimes villainizes that order as well, and that structure. You know, at the end of the day, the Adjustment Bureau is the bad guy, and what wins out in the day is bucking order. And with Minority Report, you know, your whole life's been written out on paper for you. The society says so right here. Yeah. You're supposed to turn out just like this. And, you know, a man has to go and prove against all odds that that isn't who he said he was going to be.
I mean, I guess, yeah, he's just going through, like, a 30-year, like, a rebel stage. He was like, you can't bring me down, the man.
No, yeah.
And then I'm just going to be a toxic member of society. That's fine. You do you, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Well, and, you know, that's also, though, I think reflective of sort of him being in the times that he was in, because it was, you know, McCarthyism was very prevalent, and, you know, you had people like Orwell who were writing stuff like 1984, and so on a certain level it is very predictive, and I think that's why his fiction ended up propelling so many modern people forward, is because it ended up being so predictive on a certain level and prosaic, you know, for what was to come.
Fascinating.
Like a dark Gene Roddenberry. Like if Gene Roddenberry sucked and his future was bleaker.
Oof. Oof, oof, oof. They can't all be Jims, I guess.
No. But all that said, Adjustment Bureau, you know...
All of that aside.
You know, and you can't separate the art from the artist, but I think that if you think about him as someone who's probably very troubled by their life and feels like, you know, they were sort of boxed in, not excusing any of his behavior, but I think that it ends up becoming very expressive in his art.
Yeah.
And in the themes of everything that he ended up writing, right? What was the bad guy of Blade Runner after? Freedom, life, you know? So, you know, I think that he still, you know, regardless of the person that he was, did make things that had an impact, and this is a really solid adaptation, I think, or, you know, at least thematically, I think it fits in with everything else that he's done. And I enjoy the experience of the movie every time I watch it.
Yeah, it's a fun little ride. It makes you think. It's very suspenseful, I would say.
Yeah. Honestly, you know, not saying that this is a bad film. I'd probably, I guess, would go, like... I guess I would honestly still probably just go 3.5.
I'd say that's a...
Just because it isn't gonna, you know, rock your world. You know, this isn't necessarily, like, you know, the best film ever made.
Yeah, but it's not the worst.
No, we'll go 4. You know what? Let's go 4.
Let's go 4. I like it. Okay,
let's be good to good things.
We're gonna double down on that. I'm gonna also go with a 4.
All right. So those were our reviews. As always, if you have any opinions on those, you're welcome to share them. You know, you can go and share them with us on Twitter. I forgot about actually one thing. Speaking of Twitter, I also did another poll on Twitter. And I chose 4 of his big movie adaptations, since Man in the High Castle is a TV show, and I did a poll. Blade Runner, Minority Report, Total Recall, and The Adjustment Bureau. Which one is your favorite Philip K. Dick adaptation? And we have a 2-way tie for the winner, with 50% Blade Runner and with 50% Minority Report. Total Recall and Adjustment Bureau didn't get a thing. So, I think that's fair. You know, Blade Runner is
iconic, you know?
And also so is Minority Report. You know, a lot of people talk about that as being one of Steven Spielberg's best sci-fi films. It's often on a lot of lists of just overall best sci-fi films. People remember that eye scene, you know, very, very iconically. So I think that it's fair.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, you've got a whole list of new movies now to watch. If you haven't seen any of those, go and watch them. Tell us what you think.
Um, I haven't seen much about Reminiscence that's inclined to make me watch it. That's why we picked this one, is because of the new Lisa Joy written and directed, if I'm not mistaken, film starring Hugh Jackman.
Has a trailer dropped?
Yeah.
Have we seen anything?
A trailer has dropped. I haven't
Okay.
seen it because I haven't gone out of my way to look into it. Just because there's so much stuff coming out that it kind of caught me by storm that this one was coming out. And then by the time that I knew it was coming out, I was like, well, I'll wait and see what reviews are like. And reviews came back very shruggish, I'll say politely, very mixed. She's the co-creator and co-executive producer of Westworld.
Oh, okay.
And she's married to Jonathan Nolan, the other writer on Westworld, who is related to Christopher.
Oh, fun.
So this is her first time writing a feature, and like she's writing it solo and she's directing it. So good for her. But yeah, it's apparently getting just sort of a mixed response. But I'll probably eventually see it.
So is this one just in theaters, or is there like
I
somewhere
think it's
we
on.
can
I think it's
watch
on
it?
HBO Max potentially.
Oh, okay. Cool.
They are eventually going to suspend the same day thing,
I mean, I get that. That makes sense.
but
you
I think
know.
that this one still made it by the skin of its teeth.
Yeah, get your opening night money. I understand that. Your midnight watchers, that's fine, but eventually put it out because there is still a pandemic happening.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why we picked the Adjustment Bureau. In case you were curious, is because it's sort of this whole mind-bending sci-fi kind of thing, and I'm sure that Lisa Joy, if she is a diehard sci-fi stan, has probably seen some of the adaptations and probably read some of the original materials as well. And when I heard the plot of Reminiscence, I was like, oh, that sounds like a Philip K. Dick story. So,
I mean, who knows? Maybe she was very influenced by his career.
yeah. All right. Well, moving on for y'all. Next up, we're going to talk about two new trailers that came out. The first one that we'll talk about is Spider-Man: No Way Home, which I thought was all right. I'm excited for the movie, but I'm also hesitant and a little bit skeptical of the MCU overall. But for the most part, I think this looks fun.
Yeah, it looks like a fun time. I'm curious of how many times the multiverse is going to split into multiverse splits, because it feels like now that it happened in Loki, it's just kind of happening all over the place.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see this, like, kind of, I don't know, mashup movie is what I'm going to call it, of, like, all the Spider-Man stuff from past. It looks fun. It looks poppy. It looks colorful. It looks like a fun time.
How did you feel about de-aged Alfred Molina?
I don't think that he looks like himself from Spider-Man 2, but
No.
I do think that
It looks like Alfred Molina?
yes.
It looks like him, but not like him in Spider-Man 2 as we knew him.
Yes.
I think that's a fair assessment. It is a costume change. The biggest heartbreak for me, speaking of Doc Ock in this new movie, is just that Sam Raimi used a lot of incredible puppetry on Doc Ock's tentacles in Spider-Man 2. I think it was 4 people an arm. It was like a 16-man puppeteer team, or 16-person puppeteer team, that made Doc Ock's arms move, and I know for a fact that none of that is here. And I think that's a real shame.
I mean, honestly, I think that that's a huge shame, not only for those performers that are not having a job anymore because of, I guess, maybe those jobs got transferred over to the CGI department. Great. But, those CGI people were still there. You had to mask out all the people, so we could have had both. At the end of the day, we can always have both.
No, for sure. And also, of course, I think that even though Doc Ock's arms do break some rules, I think, for the most part, it's not overly egregious, whereas I feel like here they'll probably definitely stretch to like whatever length that they need, because we're not grounding it in anything practical.
It's just really what the movie needs, you know, at
What
that
it'll call
moment.
for in
Exactly.
that beat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It needs to be 20 feet here and then 40 feet there.
Don't you worry about that. They stretch or something. I don't know.
So, but other than that, I think it looks fun. I hate the notion of this bringing in the Venom franchise or the upcoming Jared Leto Morbius movie, because I'm not a big Jared Leto fan as a performer. And also, I'm just not an overall fan of the Venom movies. They haven't won me over.
No, not overly. And they exist and they are there, and that's great, and I don't need to watch them. So I would prefer for them not to be a part of this, because then I'm just going to get a whole lot of like, oh, well, I don't know what they're talking about in this movie now because it's talking about a Venom thing that I was never going to watch.
The next trailer, both trailers are Sony properties. Well, I guess Bond used to be a Sony property. He's not anymore, I don't think.
It's so hard to keep track of. Stop selling everything, people.
Well,
Consistency.
But the next trailer that we're going to talk about is No Time to Die, which is the upcoming Bond film. It's apparently, Daniel Craig's last time in the saddle.
Oh, and they made that very obvious in the trailer.
With it being the epic final conclusion.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the trailer being like a previously on other Bond movies of Daniel Craigdom.
Yeah, this trailer was long.
Yeah, and all we saw were just clips of old movies past. It was like, remember that old feeling?
It was a whole bunch of the old movie, and then it was a lot of repeated clips of the new movie that we've been seeing clips for a long time now, because that's what happens when your marketing department has to market a movie for like twice the length that it was supposed to market a movie for.
Well, when you don't adjust well in a national pandemic, you get left behind.
So, it used a lot of clips that we've seen before. There was some new footage in there, but for me, a lot of modern trailers, I just think show way too much, and are also just way too long. Like 3 minutes for some of these trailers is just honestly brutal.
Yeah, I think it was interesting though that they definitely wanted to make sure that people were like, oh, this is about Daniel Craig.
Don't you worry, folks. Daniel Craig is in it. In case you doubted.
Because like the last trailer felt more like we're gonna pass off the torch to this other person, and that other person was barely in this trailer.
Yeah. But overall, and for me, honestly, the marketing of this film hasn't sold me on the fact that this is any better than Spectre, and I thought Spectre was an atrocity. I think it's one of the worst Bond films ever made. I think it's it'd be a stretch to say one of the worst movies ever made, but it certainly is not one that I think very fondly of in any capacity, especially because it retroactively hurts better films, and that's a cardinal sin for me. How dare you get your grubby little paws all over something good.
Well, that's a whole different rabbit hole.
So, but this hasn't sold me that this is any better a film than Spectre was, because Spectre was a pretty schlocky, pretty crappy Bond movie, and this feels currently to me like a pretty schlocky, pretty crappy Bond movie.
Yeah.
And the marketing hasn't helped.
Yeah, no, it has not really, like, made me go, oh, yes, Bond, let me have it. This one was like oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
You know, it was, need to take my shot and pray for the best. That's how I'm gonna go into it, honestly. Be like, all right, I hope.
Yeah, I think that that's all pretty fair. So, for the last thing, I just wanted to give y'all some updates on CinemaCon, which happened last week. The trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home actually was supposed to be debuted exclusively at CinemaCon, but part of it ended up getting leaked online, so they ended up leaking or posting the whole thing same day that it was debuted at CinemaCon. Also, there was some footage shown for the new Top Gun movie, which apparently, has everyone all a Twitter. they surprise screened the entirety of a film. I'm completely forgetting what it was that they screened, but they apparently like did a whole screening on surprise of a movie. We also got, of course, the first footage of Matrix Resurrections, as it's now called, originally Matrix 4, directed by the Wachowskis again. Returning, of course, with Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss and Lawrence Fishburne, but now they're joined also by Neil Patrick Harris,
Fun.
amongst others. I'm sure it'll be a Matrix movie. I'm sure it's going to be whatever the fourth Matrix movie is. Take that sentence, however loaded it may sound, and...
I'm just so tired of people making, like, more of something that ended so long ago. Just stop it. Stop it. Make new things. Stop repeating everything from the past. It doesn't make it better.
Yes, it does. It can only make it better. And how dare you? By the way, it was Ghostbusters Afterlife, the upcoming Ghostbusters film, was screened in whole.
Oh, wow.
But they're not allowed to talk about it right now. Very hush-hush. This new one, the new Matrix movie, is actually just by Lana Wachowski as a director. It doesn't have Lana's sister. And we haven't gotten the footage yet, but fans are demanding it, apparently. There's now a petition online, I believe, to get the footage released. They showed off some footage as well. Paramount showed off some footage of Mission Impossible 7, highlighting in specific the crazy stunt that they're doing, because there now has to always be one.
Did he get hurt this time?
No, he hasn't. He didn't get hurt on production of this movie. However, they did end up getting a positive COVID case that might end up with a insurance claim against the set.
There's always something.
Yeah, there's always something, folks. Someone with money is always doing something. So, Jurassic World Dominion had footage shown, and the way that Gizmodo, at least, referred to it was as a Jurassic Park movie meets Indiana Jones, James Bond, and Jason Bourne.
Oh, that's too much.
So I guess it's meant to be like a globe-trotting experience. What I heard from that is it's Jurassic Park, but instead of us being in one island for a long time, or an island in a mansion, we're now going to be, like, going around to multiple places. You know, we've maybe got, like, a roving bad guy of some kind.
I mean, I guess that'll be interesting. We'll get to see dinosaurs in different environments and stuff like that. I just think it might get a little messy when it comes to the plot.
Yeah. Also, apparently, CinemaCon got the first look at The Northman, which is an upcoming Viking film by Robert Eggers, the director of The Witch and The Lighthouse.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I could be into that.
Yeah, I liked both of those.
Halloween Kills had some footage shown. I've already seen too much of that movie. I don't want to see another drop. If a new trailer comes out, I'm not watching it. So don't come here for more information. I already saw way too much in that first trailer.
No, it's hard when you give me your entire horror movie in the trailer.
And like I'm sure that there are plenty of things that I'm gonna be like, oh God, when I watch the movie. But like I'm terrified that they're going to show me more of those moments, and I want to see them.
No, yeah, you're giving me enough that I can pretty much like sculpt out the plot right now, and yeah, you can surprise me with stuff visually, sure, but at the end of the day, if it checks off all the boxes, then I was still right.
We also got, apparently, a little bit of new footage of the Batman, but mostly what happened was some little interview bits were cut into some footage with Matt Reeves, where he talked about how he's trying to make the story, different than any Batman story that's been done before. I'm very excited about that one.
Oh, yeah.
10 whole minutes of No Time to Die were shown.
That'll be the next trailer.
Well, this one was the final one. That's apparently it.
Yeah, so they say.
Well, it's coming out next month. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Finally. Oh, right.
But yeah, so CinemaCon happens annually. It's a big media event. At the same time, actually, that CinemaCon was happening, GamesCon was happening as well. So it usually is studios go up day by day. There's a sort of content schedule. You know, Paramount's gonna speak in the morning, and then Warner will do their panel in the afternoon, and there's a luncheon, you know, before all of that for producers and things like that. So CinemaCon is like a very big to do. It's quite the media event.
So fancy.
Yeah. And it happens annually. It certainly is a place to watch for like a lot of news and things like that. And obviously we did get some stuff out of it. We at least got, you know, the Spider-Man trailer. And I wouldn't be surprised if the first Matrix trailer that we do end up getting is just the CinemaCon trailer just released, you know, a month from now.
Yeah. So was this con in person, or was it still a virtual thing?
This was, if I'm not mistaken, this was an in-person event.
Ooh.
I'm not sure, you know, if they required like vaccines or masks, but this was an in-person event. It was because they do like all of the screenings there and that sort of thing.
Well, I remember Nick doing the whole screening virtually for the thing that Nick did.
South by Southwest.
Yes. So I was more just curious of what their deal was for this.
No, I'm pretty sure that this was an in-person event.
Interesting. Cool.
Beyond that, there's honestly not too terribly much to tell y'all. I mean, she and I have been watching the same things. I know that that's shocking to you.
Right here in this very room.
Lately, the only things that we've watched that weren't related to Film Buds were Spider-Man 2, except I should put the caveat, we watched the one, the only, the cut that the true fans know, Spider-Man 2.1.
That's right.
The extended cut on home release. And let me tell you, a gem of, well, that didn't feel necessary.
No, especially
just
for
a treasure
trove.
trove.
All of the effort that they went into it. They changed the title and the movie and everything, and I couldn't tell you what the extra footage was.
For a bunch of moments that you'll know them because you'll go, that felt longer than it should have been, or was that always there?
Oh, but my favorite was still J. Jonah Jameson.
There is one scene that is worth the addition, and it is after J. Jonah Jameson has gotten possession of the Spider-Man suit from the homeless man. His office staff catch him dressed as Spider-Man pretending to shoot webs from his desk.
No, yeah, and it's great because you definitely know that it's not him, like, in these deep lunges on his desk. I think it just makes it funnier to, imagine.
I think it might be him.
Oh, then good for you. Good for you. You
you
so
saw
limber.
You saw how ripped that man was once he became, like, Jim Gordon and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's always been a fit man.
You know what? Still, good for you. You limber. That was great. I loved it.
I wonder if... I'd like to imagine J.K. Simmons doing yoga, because now I like to imagine him, like, starting out his day doing yoga, you know, when he was on production of Whiplash, and, you know, having a nice hour of zen, and then going in and going, "Are you dragging?" You know, and just screaming down the neck of children.
I think that's what you need, honestly.
Yeah, you need the come down.
Yeah. I like it. Now that's my favorite part from 2.1.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we watched recently was Avengers Endgame. We've been making our way through the MCU, the first 3 phases, and we've only got one left, of course, the epilogue, Spider-Man Far From Home. And then we'll eventually debut. We've been working on a bracket as well, and so once we get this done, we'll go and share the bracket. Maybe I'll even, like, post it on filmbuds.com so people can go and see the whole bracket laid out.
Ooh. How we did it.
But Endgame was great. You know, it's still really good. I think that it's a really enjoyable film. I can understand why, if you're not, like, a Marvel stan, you know, or even just passingly into Marvel, I can understand why it wouldn't be for you. You know, like, if you're not in at this point, this isn't the one that's going to convince you.
No, if anything, you're just going to be so confused and be like, this is really nice and colorful. I just wish I cared about any of these people.
Yeah.
You need the other movies to really get the impact of this one. But once you do watch all the other movies, I think that this movie just it hits a nice, like, you know, that sweet cry spot that you like to pick at, where you're just like, this sucks and I like it.
It's hard to tell people that a film franchise is sort of justified in running that long, and that you have to sort of engage at least in minimum 5 to 6 movies before this one.
Yeah.
You know, but I do think that if you engage in, again, minimum 5 to 6 movies before this one, I think that the reward and payoff of the film ultimately is there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that that's fair, because at the end of the day, we got the Suicide Squad movie, and we didn't know anything about half of those people, and that was fine. So I think that if you want to kind of skip out on some of the one-off movies that aren't
And
our
some
main
of the lesser ones,
yeah, then that's fine to get here. I don't think that will dilute it at all, if you're paying attention, of course.
Yeah, you have to be active. But no, so that's sort of all that we've been watching. Lauren, of course, is going to be joining me next week. Next week we have sort of a heavier... Currently it's planned to be a bit of a heavier episode. We're going to potentially be talking about 9/11 through the lens of the looming tower, and a documentary as well. So that one won't necessarily be, like super, super peppy, but, it'll also not be like, too dense either. We'll try and make sure that we still have as good a time as anyone can within good taste while discussing 9/11.
Yeah, of course.
But thank you for, of course, joining us this week. You can always, of course, catch our previous episodes wherever podcasts, whatever streaming service you're listening to this on. You can catch them on our website. That's thefilmbuds.com. If you aren't already following us on our socials, please do. That's the Film Buds podcast on Instagram, and we're at Film Buds on Twitter. So please go follow us there. Engage. I'm trying to be more active with the Twitter, so not the Twitter as in the website, but like the Twitter as in our personal Twitter. I'm not old. I'm
sorry.
But I'm trying to be more active on Twitter, so come call me an idiot. We'll yell at each other like regular people do on the internet.
Yeah, that's healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Let's be really healthy. No, I'm kidding. We can come and we can talk about things that we like, and if we don't like something, we don't have to like something. That's fine. So come and check us out. If you have any questions, send them to thefilmbudspodcast@gmail.com. We always love to answer your questions and get y'all into the discussion. Dear, thank you for joining me. Did you have a good time?
Yes, I did. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, it was essentially, it seemed a much better pick to have you come on and be my co-host than to punish them with just an hour of me rambling into their ear.
Well, if I can save them from just you lecturing, then I guess it was a win for all of us.
Well, and this is supposed to be the Film Buds, and so other friends of the show were a little bit, otherwise preoccupied, so I thank you for coming on, and you're, of course, always my bud.
Oh, of course, love.
So, thank you for listening as always, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.